just outside the central Texas town of Florence. It's actually been known to collectors since at least 1904 and professionals since 1929. The site was subject to both looting and collecting for almost 90 years. What's really remarkable about the Gault site is the surprises that it held for the archaeologists. One of the first was the discovery of stones like this one with incised designs on them, hand size and smaller. The stones that were found in the deepest layers of the site are currently the oldest dated art in the Americas. If you look at this one's smaller than your hand. If you've been out on an excavation, you know we use metric in the field. If you use an English measurement on one of our forms, we'd beat you within 2.54 centimeters of your life. So, that scale is only 2 inches long. So this whole thing's only about 5 inches long. It's very small, but you can see the paired zigzags and paired lines going all the way across it. We now actually have more than 160 of these in the lab, most of them with geometrical patterns. And stones like this are found on every continent except Antarctica, going back as far as 450,000 years to pre-human hominids. Many of the designs, these geometrical designs, are actually part of the software of your frontal cortex. They're part of how we store and sort memories. I have been asked to speculate about what they were for endlessly. I really can't. There's no evidence one way or the other. But I can tell you the really interesting thing to me is that these are shared by humans worldwide. Our next big surprise was the sheer quantity of archaeological material at the Gault site. Over 11 years, the Gault School of Archaeological Research excavated approximately 3% of the site and brought 2.6 million artifacts back to the lab to study. Now, a lot of that's the debris from what apparently was a large-scale tool manufacturing operation. You'll see a lot of debitage in the pictures there. We got a further surprise when we came upon the lower mandible of a juvenile female Columbian mammoth. And that would have been a nice find in itself, but it was surrounded by 22 stone butchering tools and a Clovis point. And this makes it a probable mammoth kill site, one of only 19 currently known in the Americas. Test excavations in another part of the site came across a slightly rectangular stone floor. Now, that's not surprising if you don't want to go to sleep and wake up wet with the moisture that wicks up through central Texas clay. You got to get up off that surface. But this floor, however, is surrounded by a non-random scatter of artifacts, including a flint knapping area to the north, where someone was manufacturing and resharpening stone tools. There was an area filled with burned flakes, indicating that there was a fire somewhere to the east of it, and an area to the southwest where we had quite a lot of animal bone, basically their garbage pile. This data, among other things, indicates that this floor has a front and a back, and therefore a structure on top of it. The tool technology and the dates tells us it is at least 13,500 years old and perhaps older, making this currently the oldest excavated house in North America. Not something we're supposed to have for migratory big game hunters. The last surprise that we had was a really big one. In 2002, we were actually winding up excavations. We weren't sure we'd be able to get back in the site. And we were leaving the site, and one of our staff, Sam Gardner, pictured here, was cleaning a profile. And he was basically following the water table as it dropped. He'd dig until he hit water, then he'd dig a little further, wait a couple days, dig lower. And at the very bottom of this test unit, he ran into Clovis age artifacts, those we used to think represented the first peoples of the Americas, so 13,500 to 12,700 years old. But below the Clovis artifacts, he kept finding more stone tools and debris that predated Clovis. In 2007, after acquiring the Gault site and donating it to the Archaeological Conservancy, we excavated some quick holes to show visiting archaeologists the geology of the site. The largest gathering of archaeologists in the Americas, the Society for American Archaeology annual meeting, was in Austin for the first time ever. I can tell you from sad experience that 5,000 archaeologists on our downtown 6th Street bars is not a good idea. But they came, they liked it so much, they came back in 2014. They were supposed to come back during the pandemic. So we're definitely on the rotation. And it's not because Austin has a nice convention center. Well, in digging these units to show them the geology of the site, we again found artifacts, some almost 3 feet below the Clovis strata. So after the archaeologists left, we raised a large stress skin building over the area, and we began to remove the mixed surface soils. I was in charge of logistics. I had a very short window to put up this building, and because we did that, we couldn't get rid of the mixed stuff on the surface with something like a front end loader. So they gave me a pick and a shovel and a wheelbarrow. They say this is one of the few pictures of me actually working. I actually didn't get much further towards the entrance of this building than I am now, because I started to find things right where they should be. So curse their inefficiency. This is one of the few areas that apparently hadn't been looted in the past. And I say curse their inefficiency because as an archaeologist, I'm responsible for all archaeology. We were interested in the stuff that was about 13 feet down, but I have to take care of the stuff on top too. And the record at Gault was from a unit a little closer to the entrance in this tent, in a 1x1 unit that was 10 centimeters deep, so roughly 4 inches by 3 feet. We found 16,683 tools and the debris from manufacturing tools. Everything larger than a quarter, we got its exact position on Earth with a laser system. We read all that information on our clipboard. We map it on our clipboard. We read all that information on an artifacts removed chart. We read all that information on a photographic log. We read all that information on a dry erase board. We get a north arrow and a camera, take a picture of it, and put it in a baggie. 16,000 times. It took the 2 young ladies digging that particular unit almost 2 months to dig down 4 inches. We excavated a 56 square meter unit. It was designed to step down twice to avoid anything eventually falling down in there. And it was designed to expose roughly 12 square meters on the underlying bedrock. The stone circles you see in this picture, there's one in the foreground and one right smack dab in the middle, are actually 8,000 and 9,000 year old burned rock ovens. Again, we're responsible for all archaeology. That one in the middle, they put it in there like a target, like they knew we were going to dig. It took us a couple of months to get around that one. We actually finally reached bottom in 2013. It was a very impressive hole to look at. And it's even more so if you realize that we do microscopic use-wear analysis on the stone tools. So we look at the edges of those stone tools under a high-powered microscope, and they can tell us what material they were used on and what direction. So we can tell the difference between woodworking and bone working, between meat cutting, dry and wet grass cutting. All these things show up differently on the stone tools. But that actually means you can't use steel tools around the stone tools. The material that these people are using for their tools, chert, is stronger than steel. And a steel tool leaves a telltale streak of silver right across the stone if you use, our favorite tool like a trowel. So this hole was excavated by volunteers and staff using chopsticks and bamboo splinters and little tiny nylon artist palette knives. Makes it a much more impressive hole. This is actually the bedrock at the very bottom. We did find what we were looking for. We found more than 130,000 tools and the debris from making tools that date from 16 to 20,000 years ago. Even the bedrock here has a story to tell. You can see some grooves in the bedrock down in the lower right that kind of goes straight up and down there. A bunch of grooves in the middle going diagonally across the picture. And you can see the rough outlines of some grooves just starting way in the upper left. And they tell us that this was once the outer bend of Buttermilk Creek. It was cutting outward. And people were on the point bar in that bend. And they were making tools and they were butchering one of the now extinct horses, in this case, Equus scotti. You can see the horse teeth all there in a row. The mandible has long since disappeared. The Gault site, which has abundant stone and water resources as well as readily available foods, was popular throughout time. There are 22 archaeological cultures that you could find on a Central Texas archaeological site. And we not only have all 22, but we have a culture or cultures even earlier we've not yet named. I've been arguing for years for the Clark culture. I'm not getting anywhere at that, but it's worth a shot, right? Some of the stone tools left behind by the earliest Texans are very familiar, and some are significantly different, as would be expected of a tool style prior to Clovis. The projectile points are unlike anything we've seen before. On your left is a Clovis point, and on your right, the bases of 3 points found almost 14 feet underground. And they're not big. If you look at that scale, those are only about 3/4 of an inch long. The knee-jerk reaction would be that they're arrowheads, but the bow and arrow didn't get to Texas till about 1,200 years ago, about 800 AD. So either these folks are using a bow and arrow and then folks later didn't, or they're using a technology we don't yet understand. The thing that would tell us the most about these would be their tips. And unfortunately, as you can see, I don't have any with tips intact. Our colleagues liked Austin so much, they came around for that return bout in 2014, and we hosted busloads of them at the site. These are the ones that weren't hung over on Saturday morning. They asked a lot of questions, but they seemed satisfied by what they'd seen. And in July of 2018, we published this article in Science Advances, one of the premier science publications in the world. It details the geology, stratigraphy, and dating of the Gault site, showing that we have human artifacts that are unquestionably 16 to 20,000 years old in Texas. You can go and see this if you'd like. You can either search Gault site in Science Advances or go to the Science Advances site, because I paid a tremendous amount of money to make it open source so you can actually still read it. What surprised us when we published it is, well, the news was picked up by electronic and print media throughout the United States. That didn't really surprise me. It didn't surprise me when our friends in England at the Daily Mail picked it up. I mean, that, for instance, they almost speak the same language as we do. But then articles were written about it in magazines, newspapers, and online throughout the world. In fact, there's a lot more interest and knowledge about the subject, about the people in the Americas outside the US than there is inside. I checked recently, in the last 12 months alone, there were more than 12,000 downloads of the article, and the information was exposed through media, blogs, etc., to almost 5 million people. One of the first publications was in the leading newspaper in Santiago, Chile. It highlighted Gault and Monteverde. When Monteverde was found, even though Tom Dillahay, who was working at Monteverde, is actually from Vanderbilt, there were more than enough people saying, I don't know, it's in South America. And I'll have to say there's more than a little cultural and otherwise racism involved there. We tend to dismiss things in South and Central America. But that, as you can imagine, angered the people of Chile. So this article highlighted Gault and Monteverde, and it could pretty much be summed up with, we told you so. So since 2015, we spent a lot of time in the lab. We had to write up our findings from this incredible archaeological site. For every day in the field, there's at least 40 days in the lab to figure out what it means. The Gault staff had been working on the monograph on the Clovis and older data from the site since 2004, and it's now undergoing final revisions for the publisher and hopefully will be printed in the next year. The Gault School of Archaeological Research is a nonprofit interested in research and education regarding the peopling of the Americas, not the peopling of Texas. So we actually keep busy with a lot of other projects. We've worked on early man sites from Oaxaca, Mexico, a possible mammoth kill site in Guatemala, searched for underwater sites in the Gulf of Mexico. We examined a possible bison jump in Edwards Plateau. We did lithic analysis on an early man site called Huaca Prieta in Peru. Volunteers and Gault School members work on about 10 sites here in Texas every year looking for data comparable to Gault. If you'd like to find out more about our work, we actually have a website at gaultschool.org. The Gault School of Archaeological Research is a nonprofit. They're dependent on grants, memberships, and donations for people like you who are both interested in what the past can tell us and maybe wish to participate in our discoveries. Our website has more information on how you could join us in this mission. With that, I'd like to thank the Society and David for inviting me tonight, and I will be happy to hang around as long as necessary to answer any questions you might have. There we go. I'll kill that. Let's see. Oh no. So people lose the audio? David, can you hear me? Ah, okay. All right, do we have questions out there? I don't have the, wow. Where's the audio? Yeah, I'm not hearing Jim either. David, can you hear me?
I'm just a Zoom member. I mean, I'm a member coming in through Zoom. And I just wanted you to know that I can certainly hear you.
Well, somebody can, but I can't hear Jim anymore.
And I haven't heard him. Wait a minute. Here's the OMSI audience coming back. Let's see.
Jim, we're not hearing your mic. Well, I see. I have one question here from Al. Said, what universities are supporting this work? None. The Gault School of Archaeological Research is a 501c3 nonprofit. We have had offices at Texas State University and the University of Texas, but the universities themselves do not support the work.
Clark, I got my microphone fixed. Can you hear me now?
Back.
Yay. We got a question from our audience here.
Yeah, you had at one point shown all the artifacts you got from that initial that 4-inch layer that was on the top. That was an incredible amount of artifacts. How much of that was chert and how much of that was actually worked stone for a purpose?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is debitage. It's the flakes that come from making stone tools.
Yeah.
I don't have a final count on total numbers of tools, though I'm told it's somewhere in the 600,000-700,000 region.
Whoa.
It's a lot of tools.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, believe me, 2.6 million artifacts. There's like a $350,000 curation bill we have to pay.
Whoa. Yeah, whoa.
That's a lot of stuff. And you know, like I said, it's like 40 days in the lab for every day in the field or more. You know, when you're talking, you know, a small number of researchers, and then you look at 2.6 million artifacts, just looking at this stuff takes forever.
Clark, I would ask a question. What's your, how common are bone tools at this site?
Very uncommon. In Central Texas, we have a water table that rises and falls a lot, and mostly clay, and it eats everything organic. So basically, we don't even get pollen and phytoliths. Stuff that we think is near indestructible gets destroyed. So very little. We have some bone artifacts, but they're all archaic.
If you have trouble with the organic preservation, what are you using to date?
Primarily optically stimulated luminescence. but we used carbon-14, we used optically stimulated luminescence, we used IRSL, and a couple others. We want them all to compare, and we want them to match up also with the relative dates of things we already know the date of.
Sure. Other questions?
I see a couple here. What's the next phase of excavation research? We're actually done excavating at the Gault site. Frankly, even though we've only done 3% of the site, if we excavated more there, it would just run up a larger curation bill and is unlikely to tell us more. And one site is a data point, not a pattern. Archaeological cultures are patterns of human behavior. So we need to find other sites like it. And that's why we're constantly excavating other sites here in Texas, looking for sites comparable to Texas. Though I have to say, one of our alumni, Cyprian Argeline, excavated at Chiquihuite Cave in Zacatecas, Mexico, has dates at 28,000. And if you've seen the recent articles on White Sands, the new dating has all come in to match the old dating at 23,000. So I'm feeling really comfortable that we're at least seeing dating patterns in this area. I like to say, Al asked why the Texas universities explained why they aren't supporting this work. Because they don't give away money unless you're on the football team. Sorry, the salary of the head football coach at the University of Texas would make us the largest archaeological research facility in the world. And that's only if we got 1 year of his salary. Yeah, they do not fund us. We're funded by private donors. We write grants. We have members that have joined Gault and participate. So there's another question here. How does this fit in the coastal migration theory of the people of the Americas? Well, here you go. If you could not have walked here because there was a 3-mile-high wall of ice in the way, you had to have come along the coasts. Now, that could be the Atlantic, the Pacific, or both. We definitely know that people came from Asia later, as did animals. And in fact, they were moving in both directions. We don't have enough information to see if that's the only thing that we've got. One of the problems that we run into is when people even propose anything about the Atlantic, first of all, they're dismissed as racist. And I'll have you know that white is only about 9,000 years old, so there are no white people. And the population of Europe's been replaced at least 3 times in the last 14,000 years. We're not sure if you go back 20 or 30,000 years, if you could tell people in Europe from people in Asia genetically. There's a lot of missing genetics. One of the problems we have is a lot of early sites along the East Coast. And out of right now, there are 29 human skeletons older than 9,000 years old in the New World. The 2 oldest are only 12,000 years old, so way short of where we need them to be. And those are almost all found west of a line you could draw through this hemisphere on the Mississippi. So on one side, we got bodies, and on the other side, we got sites. And we need people in the, we need some skeletons in the east, and we need some more sites in the west to really start making some sense out of this. Somebody asked, is the Gault site a chert source? Yeah. The Edwards Plateau here in Texas, which is 34,000 square miles, and Gault's on the edge of it, is the largest source of chert in North America. It is an upraised seabed with lots and lots of chert in it. We find Edwards chert more than 1,500 miles away archaeologically. I'm convinced it's probably found even further away, but archaeologists further away would just say, I have an unknown source of chert. We've only recently looked at some ways to possibly figure out how to identify chert as to source. Andy Spear up in Utah has been working on this. He was on our staff for years, trying to figure out a way to source chert chemically. So good question there. Any others in that audience? They're all quietly staring at the screen.
Here's one from me. The incised plaquettes that you're getting, is there any naturalistic imagery on the old ones?
There are 2 that I think are not geometric. One of them I showed there has crooked lines with diamonds at the top of them, and some of the diamonds are incised. It's the kind of thing you see later that people depict as arrows or atlatl darts, but I don't think it's either of those. The lines were purposely made crooked, and the tops of them were sketched in, and I think they're depicting big blue stem grass, which is the native grass here. It would have been about 5 feet high and has a diamond-shaped seed head. Both sides of that stone have the same depiction on it with 2 grounding lines at the bottom of it. So, you know, the folks that have proposed that they were atlatl darts, I say, so you're saying that somebody depicted their hunt where they shot some animal in the ass 20 times? I'm not buying it. So I think those are actually plants. I have another one that is the shape of a hackberry leaf. It's actually a chert flake, and it's incised on the calcium carbonate crust on the outside of it. And somebody put a dendritic pattern on it so that it looks exactly like a hackberry leaf. And I can just picture somebody going, look, it looks like a leaf. You know, it's we don't have any depictions of animals or anything like that. So
Have those incised plaquettes been published separately?
I published an article with a couple other people in American Antiquity on the oldest ones we had. There were a couple of them in current research in the Pleistocene when that was being published, and a couple other publications, but actually I've been working on the catalog of them to try and get that published online, hopefully within the next year. It's one of the projects I undertook when I started to when I retired. So it's a lot of work, but yeah, I'd like to get them all out there so that you could look at them. There's a number of things like this. The largest source of incised stones in the world is Parpallo Cave in Spain, which has some 6,000 of them from various time periods. And they published a beautiful 2-volume set, but I don't think the government's going to pay to have me publish a big book. So I'm going to try and get pictures and diagrams online.
That'd be great.
Is this too far back for any kind of blood residue on any of the tools?
No, it's not. And we have not done a lot of it, but we've done a little. And we did have horse and mammoth, for instance. Yeah. And you'd have to do a lot more of it. Again, that's a question of money. You know, it all just costs money. And the pandemic really put a big stake in the heart of a lot of research projects. You know, it's great for me to go to some foundation board and say, hey, I've got this really cool archaeological site, and I know you guys are feeding underprivileged kids breakfast, but this is cool. You know, kind of puts you in an awkward position. So it's been very difficult to raise that kind of money, and some of the things have higher priorities than others. So we wanted to get the dating done and the geology done so that we could publish that stuff and show that it's old. And then these other things are being done a little bit at a time. We've had 16 master's theses and 7 doctoral dissertations come out of the data so far. I know there's at least one student that was looking at protein residues. So yeah, hopefully they'll do some of that work for me. Oh, we're not getting it. I see him with the mic, but your sound's gone again, Jim.
I guess I hit the power button, Clark. Here's the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Does the Center for the Study of the First Americans at Texas A&M get involved at all?
They actually excavated with us for 2 different semesters, A&M semesters at Gault, and then worked on the basically the end of the Gault site called the Deborah L. Friedkin site. It's 300 meters downstream. They worked that for, I think, 6 years. So I have published some of that. They have comparable dates. I mean, it's basically the same site, so it doesn't surprise me they have comparable dates. And where are you going to dig next? Well, like I said, we test a lot of places in Texas looking for the same geology, the same stratigraphy, the same dates, same kind of tools. They did this year look at a Paleo-Indian site in southern Belize. We've done some more lithic analysis for other researchers as well. Someone asked if I thought of applying for Texas football coach job and then donate. Yeah, yeah. If only I had the resume. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the people keep coming back to the university, and I'll tell you, universities aren't in the habit of giving away money. They want us to bring it in, and then they get some of it off the top. In fact, in the case of UT, it's 58% off the top.
Maybe it's running out of battery.
Okay, Clark,
So we're
I
running
think
out of
we're
questions.
come to the end here. Hey, we really appreciated the presentation. Just dynamite work, and keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me here tonight. And if you ever have any questions, you can find me online. If you want to learn a lot about this, there's a YouTube video that I did for the Archaeological Conservancy that's called The Idiot's Guide to the American Upper Paleolithic. It's a much longer version that'll tell you what we know now and what the theories are now, where we're going with this. And in case you're put off by the title, I'm the idiot, you're not. So there you go. All right, so great. Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you very much, Clark. We really enjoyed it.